Hi, I'm Tracy Schuhmacher from the Democrat and Chronicle, and I'm here with Steve Reiners, the professor and horticulture chair at Cornell University. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here today.
So I understand that your specialty is vegetable gardening.
Right. I've been working for 30 years in all types of vegetable crops, working with mostly commercial growers. But again, what I've learned from working with the growers, I can certainly bring to the gardening into things as well.
And you have a vegetable garden of your own at home, right?
Yes,
Or
I
no?
do. It's not something that's very large because I also do about 12 to 15 acres of trials at the Geneva Cornell AgriTech. So usually when I come home, the last thing I want to do is go out and garden. But I do usually always have tomatoes, onions, some potatoes, squash, cucumbers, and things like that.
Well, I think this is a good year to talk about this because I think there has been a renewed interest in gardening with people at home more, with some food shortages that we've experienced. I myself bought some seeds and started growing them for the first time.
Yeah.
Really don't know what I'm doing. Have you noticed that as well, anecdotally, or no?
Usually, back in 2008, 2009, when we were in that severe recession, the same sort of thing happened. A lot of people were interested. A lot of people didn't have any experience, so they were looking for help at that point. So we're seeing the same sort of thing right now. So yeah, there's a lot of people that just want to try growing it. And the best thing, and I'm not, our growers here in New York and really around the country, but especially here, they're doing a good job as much as they can. And going ahead with sort of business as usual as much as possible. So I'm not really worried that we're going to see terrible food shortages, but I think it's a great time. Thank God this is happening in April when we can get outside and get into the gardens. And that's the wonderful thing is just get outside in the sunshine, do some work. You'll sleep better at night. You'll feel better during the day. It's just wonderful to be able to do it. And you get some fresh produce out of it in the summer.
Yeah, that's really nice. So it's a cold, blustery day in April that we're talking. But my understanding is even though it's been cold and wet, there's still things that people could be doing in the garden right now.
There are. Certainly the first thing you want to do if you've had a garden before is you want to make sure you get out there and clean it up. If you left some things out there from last fall, now's the time to get out there, clean it out, put stuff in the compost, bury things, and do all of that. But even though it seems so cold and rainy, we can still be planting spinach. We could be planting peas. They could all be in the ground right now. They could have been in the ground a few weeks ago. I planted my spinach about 2 weeks ago. Some seeds, they can put up with that cold temperature and they'll sprout and they'll get through it. And spinach and peas are those that can do that. But you could also start to be thinking about some greens like lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage transplants. And the other thing is, if you haven't started these things at home, you don't have to worry because our garden centers are open. And you can get a nice selection of the starts at all of the garden centers as well. So the key, though, is knowing the right time to plant things outside. So some things can go in now, but we're still a good month away from putting tomatoes in, for example, because we want to make sure that there's no chance of frost. So that's a real key, is knowing the right time to plant.
So you've been doing a column for us, and I'm privy to your most recent one, which is about how to prepare your soil. And Susan, who joined us, asked about how to prepare your soil as well. So what are some tips you have for preparing your soil for a variety of vegetables?
Right. It sort of depends what you're starting with, because if you're out there right now and you're looking at a new patch of ground that's still covered by some turf, you still have a lawn on it, well, that's going to make things a little bit more difficult. It would have been nice if you could have started that, preparing it last fall. But even in a situation like that, you could start sort of turning that ground under. You could rent, or if a neighbor has a rototiller, you could even use that to try to sort of break up that turf and get the ground ready. Hopefully, you've already got a garden plot, raised beds or something like that. And at this point, if you've got that, then you just need to sort of prepare it by raking it, pulling out any of the old plants that are there, and just making sort of a nice little seed bed that you could have. You don't have to do a lot of digging if you've already got a nice soft garden. And just getting that ground ready, just getting out there and working it at this time. It's a good time. If you've got some organic matter like compost, you could add that to the soil and work that in as well. So again, it's a good time to just sort of get that ground ready. And even if it's a bed that you're not going to be planting in for another month, for things like tomatoes or peppers, you could still, if the ground is dry enough right now, you can get out there and you can work it. And if there's one good thing about all of these winds that we've been having, is that it helps dry out the soil. And that's nice too, because you don't want to work your soil. You don't want to turn your soil when it's very wet, because that's a bad thing to do. It can really hurt the soil for the long term. So you want to make sure it's just dry enough that you can work it without doing any damage to it.
So I have to, first of all, Aaron asks us, is spring frost a threat if you plant varieties now? I think it is.
Oh,
at least from what I see outside.
Yes. Yeah. Considering it was snowing last night. Yeah. So we're April 21st, 22nd right now. We potentially could have a frost for another month here. But so frost sensitive crops, tomatoes, cucumbers, snap beans, squash, all of those you wouldn't want to put out because they could be affected by the frost. But the other crops I was talking about, they can take that frost. They can take temperatures down to maybe 28, 29 degrees and not have a problem. They'll live right through it. So the broccolis, the cabbage, the lettuces, the peas and spinach and Swiss chards, beets, carrots, all of those, they can put up with those colder temperatures.
And you can put them right in the ground as seed right now? You
could, yes.
Okay. And Susan, she's really into preparing her soil, Susan. And again, this is the questions you're asking are covered in Steve's next column. So be watching for that. He's done 2 for the DNC and 1's coming, but she asked for nutrients or additives. Do you have to test your soil?
You don't have to, but we do recommend it. And again, for those of you that are in Monroe County, we have a fantastic resources every county has with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Monroe County. They are open. They have some limited hours, but they are open. You could just Google, do a search for Cornell Cooperative Extension of Monroe County. There's a phone number you can call, and you can take soil there, and they can get it they can send it out for a soil test, and may even be able to give you a quick soil pH test, or a level of the acidity, which is always nice to know as well, because that will tell you if you need to add a little limestone or something like that. So again, please use that wonderful resource we have right there in Monroe County. So
you just take a little dirt, throw it in a baggie, and take it in?
No, we don't call it dirt. It's soil.
Sorry,
dirt is what's under our fingernails here and what's on the floor. But what you would want to do, you probably need about a cup of soil. And you want to go out and sample in different places, put it in a bucket, mix it all together. And when you're sampling, you want to take probably 4 to 6 inches deep is how far you'd want to sample to go down that far. And like I said, you can just take a slice from this part of the garden, that part of the garden, mix it all together, and then bring 1 or 2 cups to call the extension office to see if they can send it out. There's labs that they'll send it to down in Ithaca typically to get the soil tested.
I have never done that. Sounds like a good idea. Okay, I'm gonna get personal with my own questions.
Okay.
So I had this great idea of starting seeds. I actually worked for a farm for 12 years, but that farm sent out their seeds to a greenhouse to be started. So I've only ever kind of worked with seedlings. So I tried to grow my own this year, and you can see. I put him in a nice window. Okay. So I've got some, and actually I was doing this earlier to test it, and this is how some of these flopped over. I've got cucumbers here. Okay. I've got some really dead looking lettuce. I've got some peas that look like they're doing okay here. I've got some kale that's looking kind of floppy, and then I've got some tomatoes. Okay. So did I plant these things too early?
Some of them you did, yes.
They're all too early.
Yeah, well, the tomatoes, actually, tomatoes would probably need another month inside.
So really? So
the tomatoes there might be okay. The cucumbers, those only, if you're doing those from transplant, they only need about 3 weeks inside, and you probably wouldn't want to plant them out till about the 1st of June. So you're way early with those. So, and peas, Peas aren't even worthwhile starting as transplants. They can go right in the ground. They can go out there, put them right in the ground now.
So this is all for naught.
But it's a valuable learning experience, right?
There you go.
But the
I
lettuce,
can learn all about stuff.
unfortunately, the lettuce isn't looking that good, but the timing for the lettuce is actually good, and the kale as well. So those
But I can just throw those outside anyway. So
yeah,
they don't have to be started inside.
don't have to be, but something like lettuce, especially early, that could be planted inside and given a head start. And the key is making sure you've got enough light. So again, even though you might think you've got a really great sunny window, you'll notice the plants start to get kind of longer and longer than they should. They're just stretching for the light. So that makes it difficult to
So you need grow lights, is that kind of the
lights would help. Lights with a sunny window is really the nice way to go. But sometimes it can be frustrating, and that's where you can say, you know what, I'm going to send it all out to another farm that knows how to do it, like your former farmer did, or for a gardener, go out to a garden center, and they have a pretty good variety there right now.
Okay. So last, Erin, who I'm like, let's be real, she's the PR person from Cornell AgriTech. So she wants you to mention the cool vegetable research that's happening there.
Oh, okay, sure. I mean, there is, when we talk about vegetable research that goes on at Cornell AgriTech in Geneva, I mean, we've got breeders who are coming up with the most fantastic different types of tomatoes and kale and dry beans. We've got vegetable researchers that are looking at all the pest control issues that we have and looking at it in terms of how we can control those in the most sustainable methods possible. We've actually expanding, we're going to have a farm now dedicated to organic production practices at Cornell AgriTech as well. So we can now do certified organic research right at the farm too. So we've got people here that are working on, like I said, the breeding end of things, the best way to grow it, the soil fertility aspects, and then all the pest management from weed science, from the diseases and the insects that we've got. And that's the other problem, is every year we just seem to get a new pest problem that's coming in that we've never seen before. It's been imported from somewhere else around the world. And it's become such a challenge to grow these crops. So we certainly, I love having colleagues to work with. And when I'm writing my column over the next few months, I'll be counting on getting some help from them as well.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me. It sounds like the big thing to do right now is to clean up your garden and get your soil, not your dirt, ready.
Yeah, thank you.
And plant your cold season crops,
Right.
but not things like tomatoes and things like, or cucumbers just yet.
Right. And if you go to the Cornell Cooperative Extension website, you can get all of that information, charts that will tell you when to plant things, what's a cool season crop, what's a warm season crop. All of that's right there too.
Perfect. And Amy, Janelle Garza said she loved taking your class at Cornell in spring 2017.
That's so nice to hear from former students.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Okay, my pleasure. Anytime.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Bye.